another experience that taught me a little bit about humility in this same way, the humility of Jesus. One of those nights, and it's amazing what God can teach us in the night, like Psalm 16 verse 7 says. But one night, I heard one of my daughters crying. And my daughter ran out of her bedroom crying, and there she was just outside her bedroom door. And when I came out of my bedroom to look, she was just standing there looking around frantically, saying, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, where are you?" And she knew where our bedroom was, but she was just kind of lost for a moment in the darkness of the room. And she was just crying, "Daddy." So I ran up to her and held her and comforted her. Now, she's less than 5 years old, so that's what you would expect from a 4-year-old little girl. Imagine if one day I came out of my bedroom, into the dark room crying, "Daddy, Daddy, where are you?" You would think something's pretty wrong with me, wouldn't you? You see, I'm too proud to come out like that crying for my daddy. But my daughter, who's 4 years old, she's humble. That's why Jesus said in Matthew 18 that we must learn humility from children. Now, I want to play for you a recording of a grown man crying for his daddy. Listen to this.
They walked up a hill outside the city. Jesus carried the cross on his back. Jesus had never done anything wrong, but they were going to kill him the way criminals were killed. They nailed Jesus to the cross. "Father, forgive them," Jesus gasped. "They don't understand what they're doing." "You say you've come to rescue us," people shouted. "You can't even rescue yourself." But they were wrong. Jesus could have rescued himself. A legion of angels would have flown to his side if he'd called. "If you were really the Son of God, you could just climb down off that cross," they said. And of course they were right. Jesus could have just climbed down. Actually, he could have just said a word and made it all stop, like when he healed that little girl and stilled the storm and fed 5,000 people. But Jesus stayed. You see, they didn't understand. It wasn't the nails that kept Jesus there. It was love. "Papa," Jesus cried, frantically searching the sky. "Papa, where are you? Don't leave me." And for the first time, and the last, when he spoke, nothing happened. Just a horrible, endless silence. God didn't answer. He turned away from his boy. Tears rolled down Jesus' face, the face of the one who would wipe away every tear from every eye. Even though it was midday, a dreadful darkness covered the face of the world. The sun could not shine. The earth trembled and quaked. The great mountains shook. Rocks split in two until it seemed that the whole world would break. The creation itself would tear apart. The full force of the storm of God's fierce anger at sin was coming down on his own Son instead of his people.
That's humility. And that's the way Jesus lived his life, so dependent on his Father, that when the moment came for the first time in his life, where spiritually he was in a dark room, he who is the light of the world, was the light of the world when he was here on this earth, and had commanded that light shine forth from into darkness when he created the world. He who is the light, for the first time, had to enter a dark room. And I imagine Jesus, who had held on to his Father's hand while he was here on this earth for his entire life, feeling his Father's hand slipping out of his hand. And he's holding on to it, as it were, saying, Daddy, don't leave me. But he had to. The Father had to leave his Son. But right there in the midst of that, I believe Jesus would have held on to this promise that we read in verse 10 of Psalm 16. You will not abandon me. This is humility, though, that Jesus lived his entire life so dependent on his Father, holding on to him, holding on to him, holding on to him. And that's why his life was always one at perfect rest. You could put him in the middle of a boat that was about to get tossed